Hi, this is conspiracy theorist Richard Hooke. Uh, actually, truth researcher. The conspiracy theorist term was come up with by Richard Nixon to discredit truth seekers. But I just thought I'd do a little video here uh, about the NASA Apollo moon landing hoax, because I have a little chapter about it in the book I've done recently with Rachel White of the United Kingdom, Takedown, a little chapter on NASA moon landing hoax. And so just wanted to talk about that for a second. And here's the book that Rachel and I did, Takedown. It's available on Amazon at Amazon Books for download. But just recently, I was going through some old stuff of mine, and I came up with some scrapbook pictures that I had glued in my scrapbook in 1968 when I was 12 years old, a little boy, when they landed on the moon. These Life magazine came, and I tore these out and glued them in my scrapbook, which is falling apart, but I do have these couple of pages still left. And I was looking at them closely now, and it's just interesting thinking back on all that's happened since then and what we know now. I mean, I can remember when the Life magazine came in '68, and I was staring at these pictures in amazement that we'd landed on the moon, you know. And then my dad was standing next to me, and he was ex-Navy, had been a lieutenant in the Pacific Fleet in World War II. The lieutenant in the Pacific Fleet on a ship out there, like JFK, actually the same rank. He was a young guy too, my dad. And we were looking at these pictures in 1968 at our house in California. And he goes, I was surprised when he said, well, he said, do you think we really went there? I can hear my dog Luke in the background. He said, do you think we really went there? And I said, well, of course we went there. There's the pictures. It's right on Life magazine. What are you talking about? And he just smiled, my dad. And then he turned and he walked away. And then my dad kind of deflated, you know, because he just smiled at the fact that we'd been to the moon, like maybe we didn't do it or something. I didn't, you know, I understand what he meant. And then I looked a little bit closer at the pictures after he said that, and all of a sudden they looked a little bit more fake, like they could have been in a studio. That hadn't occurred to me until he said that, and that was in '68. Now, in 2019, when I look at them with what we know, I mean, you can really, when you look at the details, it's more exposed that we never went to the moon at all. And actually, the first thing you notice when you look at these pictures is there's no stars in the sky. It's just totally black. There should be stars all over the place. I mean, what's going on? There's no no stars in the sky at all. I mean, they got away with that. I mean, this is obviously filmed in some deep state warehouse in Area 51 in Nevada somewhere, in a place where regular people aren't allowed to go in. But I mean, there's no stars in the sky. I mean, you can see actually here, you can see the stage set sandbox and then the fake background here where the two meet. So here's the ground in the studio set in the warehouse, and this is the photo image background where they meet. You can see that all along there. It's very clear that there's a fake background by photograph. You can see it in both of these pics here. I mean, it's very obvious. I mean, another thing actually is the footprints all over the place. I mean, it would take moisture to hold a footprint like that. These footprints are all over. our astronauts apparently were walking around up there setting up the flag, but it's 220 degrees Fahrenheit on the moon. So really, no footprint. It would take some moisture to hold a footprint like that. So those footprints, they can't be can't be right. Okay. Now another thing I noticed, actually, when I was just looking at these pictures right here, and I think you'll be able to see it, if you look closely by his backpack, you can see a cable going up to the roof, and it's glinting. And this is how when they walked around, it kind of jerked them up and down like they were in low gravity. They were hooked by cables to the roof of the warehouse. I mean, it's really astounding when you look at it in 2019. I mean, there's obviously studio lighting and shadows. I mean, there's lights from up in the warehouse coming down on the astronauts here. I mean, it's very obvious. Okay. And one thing I noticed also, just myself, just today, looking, is you can obviously see an electrical cord here. So there's an electrical cord across the ground. Now, I mean, what were they plugged into power up on the moon? I mean, I just don't think this is very likely. There's a power cord going right across the ground there. They tried to obscure it, but I mean, you can see it. It's clearly there. And one other thing is this flag appears to be blowing. Well, there's no atmosphere on the moon. You know, so how would there be any wind? Okay, I mean, the flag clearly could not be blowing on the moon. You know, and Rachel and I, we have a little chapter in the back of our book, Takedown, exposing this NASA hoax, because really, you know, they film these things with green screening, and then they fill in the background later. Is what they do. You know, and they use Stanley Kubrick as a consultant, the guy who worked on 2001: A Space Odyssey, to do these backgrounds in the foreground. It's like in a museum where they have the little sandbox and some animals, and then a photographic background in the back. I mean, that's the technique that Kubrick used. Okay. Here. Just a couple other photos here of this NASA fakery. And here we have Richard Nixon, who supposedly called the astronauts from Earth on a telephone. Now, we have cell phone towers every 30 miles or something. How's Richard Nixon going to call the astronauts on the moon? I mean, that's just ridiculous. We were so excited about getting to the moon, or we thought we'd got there, that we were willing to buy anything. You know, essentially is what it comes down to. And then also I included here a few headlines of the Challenger hoax. See, the whole NASA, everything has been a hoax. Actually, the trips to Mars, we never went there with any remote control cars. We never went to the moon. And Challenger was fake. There were the astronauts for the Challenger, the one that exploded, were marched onto the rocket, and then they went out right out the back. They didn't go up. They shot the rocket up and exploded it by remote control. And there were no astronauts in there. Okay, they faked it. I don't know, for whatever reason. Maybe they were afraid to do a major mission at that time because people would have been able to see it. But anyway, Challenger was a stunt. It was exploded in the sky. There was no astronauts in there. And actually, those astronauts still have jobs at NASA, and one of them, Judith Resnick, is a teacher at Yale. So we know they're still alive. The supposed astronauts of the Challenger, they're still alive. Now, actually, the Mars missions were done in northern Canada. And actually, you magnify some of these photographs of supposed Mars terrain, you can see Arctic lemmings crawling around. So that didn't happen. They're trying to get money for these Mars missions as a scam, They just use it for other things and do a couple of low-grade videos to show the public, but that's not what the majority of the money that we give to NASA is being used for. It's being used for other things. It's a taxpayer scam. These Challenger astronauts, they're all alive. They're all still alive. They didn't die, or were not exploded. Okay, that didn't happen. I mean, here's Judith Resnick before and now teaching at Yale. I mean, Yale is the little CIA deep state factory, and they've given her a job there apparently. Now, Hubble, the so-called Hubble telescope, apparently they take those pictures from the side of a high-flying plane. There isn't any Hubble up there. I mean, if there is, it's just a fake one up there floating around, but it's not true. Now here we have Werner von Braun, who was the head of NASA in the early 60s, on a set, but obviously of a display. But actually, this is actually how they did it, and obviously. Let's see what up here we have. Tricky Dick Nixon laughing with the astronauts as they're being decontaminated in an Airstream trailer. When they came back to Earth and were picked up by the Navy ship, then they were walked outside and into the Airstream trailer. So, I mean, if they were walked outside, if they were contaminated with something, it would have spread to all of us Earthlings anyway. So the whole contention is ridiculous. It was just all for show. Okay. I mean, basically what they do on these supposed space shots is they show at Cape Canaveral the rocket taking off. It goes up, it goes out of sight, and then it begins its parabolic curve to go over and down into the ocean. But the minute it goes out of sight, then on television they change it to a CGI video showing the rocket powering straight across the sky. There's no explanation of how they would have gotten that picture. Like, I guess we assumed we had some kind of satellites up there that could take those kind of pictures, but the satellites, there's no satellites are fake too. I mean, actually, you examine the pictures that they show satellites all over the internet, and none of them look real at all. So anyway, view all this NASA stuff with very skeptically. The spacewalks are done in deep water tanks in Texas. They can simulate no gravity by floating around in the water. But I mean, there's scan it on the internet. You can see bubbles coming out of the astronauts' helmets. And anyway, that's the International Space Station. They've got one underwater, and they show them floating around outside working on it, and then they put a fake background on it. And actually, the truth of the matter is it's not just NASA in the U.S. The Freemasons and NASA, it's international. So they run the space programs in China and India and Russia. So these countries are all in on it in faking out the world and getting money for these space programs that are a scam. Okay. So anyway, that's the truth about that. So I know this wasn't too highly technical, but I just wanted to tell you my opinion on the Apollo and NASA program hoax. So JFK researcher Richard Hooke / conspiracy theorist signing out for now. I'll talk to you later. Bye.